either the location itself or drive to the South Ames Walmart and then go vote for Governor Pawlenty. So, I know you didn't come here to talk to me and listen to me, but this is Governor Pawlenty. I want to thank you for coming over. I want to thank you for sharing your day with us. So, thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming out today. I really appreciate it. And I know it's a sunny day in the middle of a weekday, and the fact that you take time to be here, I really, really appreciate it. And Eric Helen, thanks for the kind words, and his support and leadership of our campaign is really important. In a few hours, my wife Mary's going to land in Iowa. I hope you have a chance to meet her. And during this campaign, she's a big part of the campaign. I think you'll like her a lot, and she was campaigning with me a week or so ago in Iowa, and she'll be here throughout the straw poll and through Saturday. But she sometimes gives me some really good advice, but sometimes it's not the easiest to hear. When I was first thinking about running for governor back in 2001, I was the majority leader of the Minnesota legislature, the House. And you know, my time as governor was coming up, or at least thinking about running for governor. I said, honey, I don't think I'm going to run. Jesse Ventura was the governor. It wasn't clear whether he was going to run for a third term. It's a Democrat state. I said, look, I've been majority leader. We've got a lot of good things done here. It's time to turn the page now and move on to life's next chapter. And she came up to me. She said, you got to run. She got my lapel. She said, you got to run. I mean, there's nobody else who can do it. Nobody else who can win. What we believe is going to get washed away. What you've accomplished will get washed away. I thought, wow, I'm Rocky Balboa. This is my Adrian. And she gave me this great inspiring speech, so I ran and through uphill odds, and many people said I didn't have much of a chance. I won. And I got elected governor, but we had a big budget deficit when I first got elected. And of course, when you're first elected governor, you got to have an inaugural, and you got to have a State of the State address and a budget address. So that first month or so being governor was really busy. And my schedule got away from me. And Mary properly one night was holding me to account on my schedule. She said, look, you know, Mr. Big Shot, you're not just governor, you're also dad and husband, and you got to get the balance back in your schedule. So we had a pretty tense discussion. And I said, well, honey, I mean, don't you remember? I mean, you gave me that inspiring speech. You're the one who told me to do this. Then there was this kind of pause in the room. And she said, yeah, but I never really thought of it then. So I hope you meet her. She's a real joy, and she's a real truth teller. But in that case, she was wrong. But she's all in on this campaign, and we're really putting our heart and soul into trying to get Barack Obama out of the White House. And I'm running for President of the United States because I've got the leadership and the experience and the record of results to get this country back on track. Now, you know what happened last time, and we got to learn some lessons from that. Barack Obama rolled through Iowa in 2007 and 2008 and convinced the Democrats in this state to catapult him towards the presidency of this country. And we got into this mess for a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons we're in this mess is because we put Barack Obama in the White House and he wasn't ready for the job. So one of the things I want to ask you to consider in this campaign is before we put the new person in that office, let's make sure that he or she's ready for the job. And this is a job that requires some leadership experience, some executive experience, and a record of results. Barack Obama was a community organizer. And he was paid in part by Acorn, remember that? And then he was a college professor. He was a lecturer, which is about what he still is, a lecturer to the country. And then he was in the United States Senate about long enough to have a cup of coffee before it got cold. Then we put him in the White House and made him president, and we wonder why it's not working. Well, if you're going to be president of the United States and leader of the free world and commander-in-chief, you better have run something large as an executive in a public setting and driven it to results. Number two, we learned with President Obama, you know, his speeches were wonderful in the eyes of a lot of people. I mean, remember those soaring speeches? The big rhetoric had almost this entertainment quality to it. And some of us you know, listened to it and said, wow, maybe we don't agree with the content, but he's really a great orator. What we learned, though, is words don't get the job done, do they? You know, his words and his rhetoric don't put gas in our car. Barack Obama's speeches don't pay our mortgages. Barack Obama's rhetoric doesn't pay our health care premiums. And down the rest. So we can't, you know, eat or live on Barack Obama's words. We got to have results. And by the way, he comes out the other day and gives a speech when the stock market had tanked. And while he was before he was speaking, the stock market was down about 300 or so points. While he was speaking, it went down about another 300. He was supposed to be comforting the nation. Well, they weren't very comforted by him. Now, I think it's time we downgrade him. Downgrade him from the presidency to a different job. Not just a downgrade of our credit agencies, our fire credit agencies. But we learned some other things as well. Not just put somebody there who's ready, not just don't listen to the rhetoric, but we also need to make sure we got somebody who keeps his or her promises to the country. People want to know, are you good to your word? Are you actually going to do these things? And I won't go through the list of all of his broken promises, but I'll give you a few by way of example, and the list is long. Remember, he said in Iowa, if you elect me, I will fix health care. He said he would do it the right way with Republicans. He said he would focus on cost containment. As a candidate, he said he was opposed to the individual mandate. Those were his words as a candidate here in Iowa. And then he went to Washington, D.C. and did just the opposite. Then he became president. And he said, look, we've got to cut the deficit. This is after he became president, after he knew the full magnitude of the economic collapse. And he said, I'll cut the deficit in half during my first term. That's what he said in March of 2009, Barack Obama. Now, when President Bush left office, the budget deficit for the year was about $500 billion. Barack Obama didn't cut it in half. He tripled. It's now about $1.5 trillion for this year. 1 year alone. And then one more. He said, yeah, we have an economic problem. And his idea, his suggestion was that pork-filled, ridiculous stimulus bill. Remember that? And he threatened the country. He said, if you don't pass it, unemployment could go all the way to 8%. Well, they passed it. Unemployment didn't go to 8%, it went to 10%. So this is the sights and sounds of a failed presidency. Somebody who wasn't ready for the job. Somebody who had the wrong direction for the country, believing that the answer is to grow government, to take things out of the private sector and bring it into government. We want to take things from government and bring it back into the private sector. And then somebody who made all of these soaring speeches and major promises and broke or left unfulfilled almost every one of them. Now, I hope we learn from that. I know I did. But we need to make sure now it's not just about highlighting his problems and his failures. It's also about convincing the American people that there's a better way and a better way forward. And so my candidacy is premised on looking the American people in the eye and telling them the truth about the real challenges in this campaign and putting real solutions on the table. Now look, I may not be the most handsome candidate, I may not be the flashiest candidate, but I'm the candidate with the best results and the best record of leadership in this race. And I don't think the country needs more entertainment or more flash. What the country needs is rolling up our sleeve and putting our shoulders back and our heads down and getting the job done for this country. So here's what I did in government of Minnesota. Look, all of the candidates are going to say, look, I'm the one who's going to cut taxes. All the Republican candidates will say, I'm going to reduce spending. All of the Republican candidates will say, I'm pro-life. All the Republican candidates will say, I'm pro-traditional marriage. They'll say, we're doing health care reform the right way. They'll say they're for enforcement against illegal immigration. They'll say they're for taking on the public employee unions. And down the list, any bobblehead could stand here and give you the Republican talking points. That's not very hard. But I could train one of these media people to do it in 5 minutes. Just shows you how easy it is. You know what I'm saying? Yes, sir. So look, the words, that's not the test. I hope you ask some additional questions. I hope you ask, have you done any of this? Because I don't think we just want the speeches anymore. I don't think we want the words anymore. You go look at my record in Minnesota, here's what you'll see. You'll see a record that took government spending from historic highs to historic lows. You'll see a record of cutting taxes, $800 million net over my 8 years in the governor's office. You'll see a record of taking on the public employee unions, including the teacher union, saying we're moving from just paying people for seniority, how many years you've been around, to performance pay. You'll see a record of appointing conservative, strict constructionist judges to the Supreme Court in Minnesota, and now we have a majority of conservative justices on my court, the Minnesota Supreme Court, for the first time in the history of my state. You'll see historic gains for the pro-life movement and abortion rates dropping at historically low rates, down to historically low rates. You'll see that I was the author of the Defense of Marriage Act in Minnesota to define marriage between a man and a woman. You'll see that I led the charge on cracking down on illegal immigration. You'll see that I took on the public employee unions to get their pay and benefits in line with the private sector before it was the cool and popular thing to do. And the list goes on. I've got the best record of any candidate in this race. The Cato Institute was a tough grader, libertarian, conservative grader, gave only 4 governors in the country an A grade. I was one of the 4. The other 3 aren't running for president. The other 3 aren't even thinking about running for president. And so I'll put my record up against results. Any candidate in this race. I think you'll like what you see. Let me just close, and I want to take your questions and answers as well. But this is not a time to be focused on putting our full faith and credit in the government. There's a lot of talk these days about putting your full faith and credit in the government, or the government's full faith and credit in backing up its financial obligations, and that's an important topic. But we should be talking about putting our full faith and credit in the American people, and our full faith and credit in God. You know, we have a country that's in big trouble, and the way forward may not be easy, but it's not complex. You can look back and see those things that made this country great. You can look back at the chapters of success of America. We can harvest those things that we know work and bring them forward to the challenges and opportunities of our time. We need to be a nation that turns towards God, not away from God. We need to be a nation that recognizes that the brilliance of this country is not our government, it's our people. If we went around this room and asked you to share your American story and what you've learned and what you value and what brings you joy and what brings you meaning, I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your family. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about your faith. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about the importance of a job and an economic opportunity and what that's meant to you and your life and your family. I think we'd hear some incredible stories about charity and kindness and love and community and philanthropy and the great works that people do. But I don't think we'd hear many stories about how the government bureaucracy came into your life and changed it in a powerful and important and positive way. The point of all that is the brilliance of our country is in us. And when government comes along and says, you know, we're going to take your freedom to dream as you see fit, to work as you see fit, to worship as you see fit, to associate as you see fit, to speak as you see fit, to invent or innovate or start something new, and say, you know, the government's going to make it more difficult or take it over or tax it or regulate it or slow it down or make it more difficult to do. Every time they do that, sometimes so incrementally you don't even notice, they not only grow their budgets, they not only grow their footprint, but they do something else that's equally corrosive, or maybe more so. And that is they weigh down and discourage the American spirit. And that's where the country's at right now, and you know that. I'm not running for president just to change Washington, D.C. I'm running for president to defeat Washington, D.C. It is out of control. It has turned into an irresponsible, reckless, dysfunctional monstrosity. And it needs to be tamed and defeated. And I'll do that. Now, people all are going to say similar things. I did it in one of the most difficult political environments in the country. I mean, Minnesota was the land of Eugene McCarthy, Walter Mondale, Hubert Humphrey, Paul Wellstone, Jesse Ventura, and now United States Senator Al Franken. I mean, if we can do it in Minnesota, we can do it anywhere, and I've never had a Republican legislature. So again, I want to close and thank you for coming here today. The way forward for this country is going to start in Ames this Saturday. It's the end of the preseason of this campaign. This is the formal kickoff. And I ask for your support. I need your help. We've got great momentum on the ground here in Iowa. And as we've had a chance to campaign here over the last few weeks on a persistent basis, we're getting more and more and more support. And so I think you're going to see in my campaign some great momentum as a result of that straw poll coming Saturday. But we need you. And if you don't have tickets yet, we can get you tickets, and they're free. We can pick them up, or get you transportation if you need it. Most of you have probably been there before. It's a fun event. There's food and music and bands and speeches. You don't have to stay for the whole day. The voting's between 10 and 4. If you're willing to come and be supportive of my campaign, just fill out one of those postcards if you haven't signed up already. We'll make sure we get you the tickets and all the information. Thanks for coming today. I look forward to your questions. I appreciate it.